this video, we're going to use Power Query to connect to an Excel workbook which contains data in different sheets. Each sheet represents one particular department of a company: operations, marketing, IT, HR, finance, and R&D. It contains the budget for that specific year. For example, if you look at this operations budget, it has different subheads. In advertising, they don't have a budget for the year. Insurance, they don't have a budget. Maintenance, they have different budgets for each month. Similarly, all of the departments have their own budgets projected for the year. Now we'll use Power Query to consolidate all this data into a single sheet and then do some analysis. First, I'll take an empty Excel workbook and use that workbook to connect to the workbook which has the data. So I'll click on the data ribbon. In there, get data from file from Excel workbook. I need to navigate to the specific folder where I have the data and then click that file. Now we could see the data getting loaded into Power Query. We could see all the different sheets here: finance, HR, IT, marketing, operations, and R&D. Now click on transform data. The Power Query editor opens. And you could see Power Query has already applied some steps while loading the data itself. If you click on the first step, the source, here we could see all the different worksheets, and the data is a table here. If you click on that, you could see a preview of the table here. Marketing, the data is a table, and so on. Now I want only the source step which is taken by Power BI, and I want to cancel all the other steps. So to cancel each step, we just need to click the cross button on each step. Now we are in the source step, and in this step I just want two columns. The first column is the name of the department and the second column is the table. I don't want the other columns. So Power Query has this option to remove other columns. So I select these two columns by pressing Ctrl and can remove all other columns. I'm left with these two columns. You could see this forward backward arrows. Click on that, you could see all the columns. Uncheck this use original columns prefix. Click OK. Now you could see all the departments, their individual subheads, and the budgets for each month displayed column-wise. So it's operations advertising, operations insurance, operations maintenance, and so on. Now if you look at the first row of the data, it contains the column names, which is obviously the header. So I want to promote this row as the header. To do that, I would go to Home and click on Use First Row as Header. You could see first row is made into a header here. You could rename this as department. Here you could see some text data in between. That's why Power Query has kept the data type as text. So you could filter the data by unchecking this text data. Now we got rid of those month data in between. Now I'm selecting all the month columns all at once and changing the data type to decimal number. Now if you look at all the green bars under the column headers, we could see 100%. That means there are no errors in the data or empty rows. So I'm ready to close and load this data. So I'm pressing close and load to existing worksheet. I select this cell and I click OK. Now we got the data loaded into this worksheet. Let's do one thing. Actually, I forgot to change the name of it. I'll name it budget. It was in load, now it changed to budget. Now I don't want the month data in columns. I want it each row. For example, operations advertising Jan, operations advertising February, operations advertising March, something like that. So I could do that again in the Power Query. Let's go here. Let's go to edit. We'll again go to Power Query. Now you could select these two columns and we could use a different functionality called Unpivot. For that, we should go to transform, unpivot columns. Now unpivot columns unpivots these two columns, unpivot other columns excludes these two columns and unpivots other columns. So I'm selecting unpivot other columns. We got each month reflected for each department and account. So operations advertising Jan 0, operations advertising Feb 0, and so on. And whatever we did is getting reflected here. So we got the data in the format we wanted. Now we could uncheck zeros to get rid of zeros. And this is the data we have of different departments and accounts and the values. I could rename this column as month, and that's it. So let's go home, close and load. Now the transform data is getting reflected here in this worksheet. Now we could insert a pivot table on this data by going insert and doing a pivot table. But another way to create a pivot table is to completely get rid of this table and directly go to a pivot table. So we could do that by right clicking, by going here, going to budget, click on load to. It will give an option load to a pivot table report in the same worksheet. Okay, it is asked query is currently connected to a table in your workbook. Loading the query data to a pivot table or pivot chart will delete the table. Do you want to continue? Okay, because I want to get rid of this table and directly go for a pivot table. I'm clicking OK. Now we got different pivot table fields here. We could click on department and account, value. We could see finance. Let's format cells, accounting. Now here comes the beauty again. What if we change the data here in the original data? Let's create a duplicate sheet here. I'm pressing Ctrl and dragging it. I could create a duplicate sheet. I'm renaming it as sales, and let's get rid of this. Let's keep the salaries as 10,000 and let's save this. Let's save this data. Remember, this is the original sheet where we have the data. Now we could go in here where we have the pivot table where the data is connected to a Power Query. If you click on refresh and you click all, you could see the sales data getting reflected here. That means if the original data is changed, that data is immediately getting reflected in this Power Pivot table. If you go to the query and edit, we could see the Power Query got the data of sales as well. Because the source data is changed, it automatically did all the steps for this as well. So that's how we could use Power Query to connect to an Excel workbook and automate the updation and analysis of the data. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching.